Cuba and the Caribbean, including the Bahamas, enjoying mutual relationships and in support of each other's initiatives. I'm Clint Watson. The story comes to you tonight from Havana, Cuba.
Could Bahamas Air soon undergo privatization? Find out more coming up in the Bahamas tonight.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Every Day.
The Bahamas are part of the Caribbean community's pledge to support Cuba's removal from international sanctions and the blockade by the United States. Good Monday evening, Bahamas. I'm Altavis Munnings.
And I'm Candino Knowles. Well, at the opening of the 5th CARICOM Cuba Summit in Havana today, the region spoke loud and clear with one voice in its position regarding Cuba. This as President of Cuba, Army General Raul Castro, reaffirmed his commitment to the region, joining forces with the Caribbean for more opportunities and accessing international grants and funding. As Clint Watson tells us tonight, the Caribbean has turned out in full support to see the advancements of these talks.
Prime Minister the Right Honorable Perry Christie, among the regional leaders of the Caribbean, greeting President of the Republic of Cuba, Army General Raul Castro, as CARICOM convenes its 5th CARICOM Cuba Summit in Havana. Speaking on behalf of the 14-member CARICOM, Chairman of CARICOM and Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, the Honorable Gaston Brown, reaffirmed the region's support for Cuba.
As far as we in CARICOM are concerned, Cuba is not a four-letter word. Cuba is an integral part of our Caribbean family, and one that we cherish, and one for which we demand respect by every nation with no exception.
Having said that, the chairman of CARICOM leaders wasted no time in calling for the U.S. blockade against Cuba to be lifted.
CARICOM's solidarity with Cuba is manifest by repeated calls year after year in every council, in every town in the world, for an end to the embargo of Cuba by the United States of America. And I make this call now from this capital in the presence of the Cuban people and on behalf of all the governments and people of the Caribbean. President Obama and representatives of the U.S. Congress, end this senseless embargo against Cuba now. Let the Cuban people thrive.
Cuba is quickly transforming from what once was a closed communist country to one that is open to welcoming the world. The revolution has pushed this island nation into a new dispensation, interested in partnering with its regional counterparts for a more united and progressive hemisphere. It is the view of CARICOM that when the U.S. blockade is removed, the curiosity that this nation has built internationally will be the driving force for the sudden growth of tourism. Based on this factor alone, the region, in particular the Bahamas, doesn't want to be left out.
If Cuba and Caribbean countries can establish the air transportation links and a network of collaboration between our hotels, multi-destination tourism that offers the distinctiveness of our culturally rich countries could be a winner for all of us. Enfermedades mortales y guerras.
Officially opening the summit, Cuba's President Raul Castro promised to honor the pledges his nation has made to the region to assist in various areas of achievements, such as healthcare, education and training, and technology. He said Cuba remains unwavering in its support for the rights of small and vulnerable countries in accessing trade and investments. He joined the Caribbean in calling for his nation to be removed from lists that jeopardize their economic development and commercial exchanges with other countries. The president says he will never forget the unwavering support of the Caribbean community to the world to remove isolation from Cuba. At the end of today's meetings, there is expected to be a signed declaration on what has been agreed on from these meetings. In Havana, Cuba, Clint Watson, ZNS Network News.
Now to other news this Monday. Late last year, there was some suggestion that the national flag carrier could be facing privatization.
Well, the minister responsible for the airline, Philip Davis, reporting that the idea may not be so far-fetched, as the United, or the state-run airline, that is, has had financial challenges for years.
Well, as Janae Noel Ferguson tells us tonight, Minister Davis says the government hopes to implement a plan very soon to reform that airline.
It's no secret the national flag carrier Bahamas Air has been draining the public's purse for years now, and it is also reported to be grossly in debt. In its 40 years, it has never made a profit. Minister with responsibility for the airline, Deputy Prime Minister Philip Davis, says a plan is being formulated to turn things around and privatization is possible.
Well, whether it's privatization or whether it's reorganization, the talks are continuing in respect to what we're going to do with Bahamas Air. We have to position Bahamas Air to take advantage of, and not only take advantage, but to position it to be able to help the economy grow. That is by identifying new routings, expanding its services internationally further, replacing the fleet.
Now, late last year, executives of the airline, airport, and allied workers union that represents hundreds of Bahamas Air employees called for answers on a privatization process that they claimed was already underway by a Chinese company. But those claims were shut down by officials. Davis told ZNS News that a committee has been selected to lay out a blueprint on the way forward for the financially strapped organization.
There is, as we speak, a subcommittee of various ministries that come to bear at meeting on a regular basis to make recommendations as to exactly, at the end of the day, what we do with Bahamas Air.
Davis would not say what companies, if any, are interested in Bahamas Air, but he did give a timeline on when he expects plans for the airline to be concluded.
That'll be an ongoing process, whether it'll be incrementally or whether it'll be done with one full swoop. That is still to be determined. But as we speak, I would say you should start seeing changes over the next 2-3 months.
Now, Davis says Bahamas Air officials have already begun to streamline the organization as they were given a mandate to reduce costs by some 10% on an annual basis. Janae Noel Ferguson, ZNS Network News.
Coming up in the Bahamas tonight, the search is on for a police killer. Find out the strategy.
And then find out why these men went to court today. You're watching the Bahamas Tonight.
This portion of the news is brought to you by the Be the Difference campaign.